Okay, listen up! This is First 5, where I look for games that respect your time and you can enjoy over a week or two. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those are 5 hours well spent. Today, we're bombing the hell out of some red guys in
Rogue Aces!
Rogue Aces pitches the question, what if Luftrausers had a campaign? It positions itself as a roguelike shoot-'em-up, but make no mistake, Rogue Aces is an arcade game through and through. Beyond the fact that you have a set number of lives before it's game over and each map is randomly generated, traits which could just as easily fit an arcade game, there's not much for a roguelike fan to salivate over. But there is a hell of a lot that shmup fans will dig. For one, the flight controls are surprisingly complex for a 2D shmup. In addition to being able to move around the screen on most any axis you see fit, you've got a throttle you can manipulate for tighter turns or slow descents as well as a boost button. The game even makes you land your plane like you would in real life, dialing back the throttle and coming in on a long, shallow run to touch down on the runway. Though I quickly realized that 99% of my deaths were runway-related incidents and opted to let the game auto-land me instead. Score penalty be damned. There's also a fuel gauge to keep an eye on, but it's so generous that it was literally never a concern. I always ran out of ordnance to drop on my enemies before fuel, so it didn't really affect gameplay all that much. Maybe it would be a concern in the veteran campaign, Rogue Aces hard mode, but that mode also requires me to land my own plane, and I enjoy my campaigns lasting for more than 5 minutes, so I guess the world will never know. Irritatingly enough, the game doesn't actually tell you most of that unless you burrow deep into its menu to locate a whole list of tutorials. I actually found these tutorials entirely on accident looking for a button config menu so I could figure out what all my buttons did. But those tutorials were a huge help, teaching me everything from the fact that my throttle was a thing to how to land my plane. Once I had figured out all the game's core concepts, Rogue Aces was actually an incredibly smooth ride. The controls on this game are intuitive and responsive, and fun to engage with. I think it's half illusion because your plane can fly circles around almost anything else in the sky, but I always felt in control during dogfights, and the game always gave me just enough time to panic and flick my plane in another direction whenever a cliff suddenly sprang into view. Rogue Aces has 7 modes split between varying campaigns and a few arcade modes, though as I've said, that feels like a bit of a misnomer. Every mode feels like an arcade mode. Campaigns tend to run on a single persistent map in a chop-until-you-drop fashion. You go out, blow up a target, then come back and your boss tells you what to bomb next. As you keep playing, you capture new airfields and slowly crawl your way across a seemingly limitless map, continuing to push the war to the right ad nauseum until you finally run out of lives. The exception is the Frontline campaign, which gives you individual islands to hop between, each with a finite laundry list of targets for you to hit before you move on to the next one. Arcade is more of a score attack affair, with you constantly fighting endless waves of enemies to get the highest score possible. Survival is just an endless dogfight, while Hot Potato is about literally jumping from one plane to another as many times as you can. The other 2 arcade modes, well, I don't know what they are, and the game doesn't want to tell me how to unlock them. A bit of a critical hole in the review, but that's where 5 hours gets you progress-wise. Rogue Aces has a few blemishes in its gameplay, the most notable being the fact that even if you've got extra planes, a run can still come to an abrupt halt if you happen to crash land in the wrong spot and get taken as a POW. This system might be realistic, but it's ultimately not very fun to have an hour-long campaign end because of a single mistake. Luckily, you don't really lose anything by starting a new campaign. All the potential missions are there from the get-go, and you'll see almost every activity the game has to offer in the first hour or two. They're technically upgrades, but they're just number boosts to your stats, so gameplay's almost identical no matter how long you've managed to keep your campaign going. Once you've made it past your first Baron boss, the game doesn't seem to have any further ideas to throw at you. Just the same hurdles in bigger batches with more explosions. And this segues us into the verdict. Even across all its different game modes, Rogue Aces is pretty one note. But that one note sings, and I had a lot of fun playing this game. Unfortunately, that also means Rogue Aces doesn't have a whole lot of replayability. Your own landing strip is the most dangerous thing in the game, so there's not much of a hill to climb challenge-wise, and you're going to be doing the exact same thing in Hour 5 that you'll be doing in Hour 1. I admittedly haven't even unlocked all the arcade modes, but my final hour with Rogue Aces was a weary one, in which I was already prepared to put down my controller. But you know what? This game is $10, and as much as my final hour with Rogue Aces was exhausting, I also remember how exciting the first hour was, and that hour alone is worth your money. Any further game time you get out of it after that is just gravy. Hey! I hope you enjoyed this episode of First 5. If you did, like, subscribe, or best of all, share this video around wherever you can. Rogue Aces by Infinite State Games is available on the Switch, PS4, and PS Vita. I'll see you all next week.